Marie Antoinette. An embodiment of youth and elegance at the courts of Versailles. A story of many faux pas and missed opportunities. By now, we're sure you must know what became of her. And her head. So you're wondering, what alternatives did she have? What else could she have done to avoid the disastrous fate she met during the French Revolution? Thankfully there's Schmancy, the place where we talk all things rich, exclusive, and fancy schmancy. And today, we are going to get into it. So was Marie Antoinette really just a victim of her unfortunate circumstances, or did she bring about her own demise? All we can say is that the school of hard knocks can be a rough place. But before all hell breaks loose, there will be many knocks at the door. And if one chooses not to answer, well, there's really not much anyone can do to help after that. It may all be history at this point. However, there are quite a few things we can still learn from Marie's mistakes. So without further delay, here are 5 things Marie Antoinette should have done. Number 1. She should have listened to her mother. So let's get started with how this young lady ended up in this predicament in the first place. Marie was the 15th daughter of Maria Theresa, the Holy Roman Empress of the House of Habsburg. Her mother ruled over Austria, Hungary, Croatia, Bohemia, and several other nations at the time, and she was darn good at her job. In 1770, when Marie Antoinette had reached the tender age of 14, her mother married her off to the future King of France, Louis XVI. He himself was only 15. It was quite customary for young royals of differing courts to marry at the time. Things were somewhat tense between France and Austria, and her mother had high hopes that the marriage would create better relations between the two nations. Marie was always a very friendly, outgoing, and social butterfly, and so she made many friends at the courts of Versailles. But due to her Austrian heritage, she never felt fully accepted into French high society. On the contrary, upon her arrival at Versailles, the public loved her. To them, she was elegant, youthful, and a symbol of hope for the French people. But of course, that was before she became queen. Though her mother ruled her own dominions with an iron fist, she was also kind-hearted, pious, and benevolent, and it's apparent where Marie Antoinette gets some of her personality traits. When Marie's mother became aware that her daughter was partying out of control, and going on too many haute couture shopping sprees, she tried to intervene. The Queen of Austria wrote her daughter numerous letters asking her to be more conscious of how she was spending France's money, and how it would appear to the public, but to no avail. By the time Marie Antoinette had become queen, not even her own mother could tell her what to do. As a young adult, she simply wanted to live life on her own terms. She became lost in a world of pleasure, and wasn't the least bothered by the rumors that were beginning to spread about her. The same rumors that would snowball, and come back to bite her in the butt years later. Well, as the old saying goes, mother always knows best. And oh Marie Antoinette, you should have listened to your mother. Number 2. She should have learned how to budget. By the time Marie Antoinette was well into her queenhood, she was spending well over $20,000 a day on clothing, $1,000 a night on gambling, $40 grand on entertainment, and millions a year on her country hideaway, Petit Trianon, her apartment at Fontainebleau, and several other palaces. For goodness sake, someone should have stepped in and taught this girl how to budget. Her husband King Louis XVI, who was known to be a bit more sensible with his own spending, should have put her on a strict allowance. As the king, he easily could have had the last word. And the frivolous spending would have instantly come to a halt. Our guess is they both must have had decadent tastes. Nothing wrong with upgrading your home, entertaining guests, or buying pretty dresses. But when all eyes are upon you, particularly the hungry eyes of the poor, one certainly must be a bit more tactful, not to draw attention to your wealth and privilege. A strict budget would have solved all of that. It's become quite apparent that she and her husband were way in over their heads. They were simply too young and too immature for the level of responsibility they held. Which is exactly why parents should not be marrying their kids off at 14. But we'll stop at that, because that's a topic for another day. Number 3. She should have confided in her girlfriends. After marrying Louis XVI, it took Marie Antoinette 7 years to conceive a child. But after that, she was popping out babies left and right. How is this? Did they have fertility issues? Did they take a vow of chastity? Unlike most teenagers today who have a plethora of sources that will teach them all about the deed, back in the day, it was taboo to discuss such personal matters, and you were left on your own to figure it out. Sadly, Louis and Marie weren't so lucky, and for years they just couldn't manage to figure it out. They finally figured it out in 1777, when Marie's brother paid the couple a visit from Austria, and got King Louis to open up about what went on in the bedroom. Her brother was then able to give him detailed instructions on how it was done. Soon after that, Marie became pregnant, and the rest is history. If you want to know why Marie Antoinette acquired such a terrible spending habit over the years, this is why. It was most likely due to her sexual frustration and the shame of not being able to produce an heir. Partying and shopping was just how she dealt with the stress. Learning how to properly have sex early on would have saved France millions. Today, it's quite common for women to openly discuss their sex lives with their girlfriends. If only Marie had had the courage to confide in her girlfriends at the time, we're pretty sure they would have laid it out for her from the very beginning. Number 4. She should have taken a ride around town. They say Marie Antoinette had a heart of gold. However, she was a little out of touch with the realities of her own kingdom. She was sheltered and pampered all her life and never truly witnessed what it was like out there in the real world. She had never really seen the misery for herself. It would have been ideal if at least twice a week she took a carriage ride around town to see what was truly going on and see things from the perspective of her people. With her compassionate spirit, we trust that this would have inspired her to use some of France's money to help feed the poor and hungry. Known to be a kind and compassionate woman, and one with access to insane amounts of money, she would have made a spectacular queen. But without the knowledge of just how bad it was out there, her compassion never got a chance to reach its fullest potential, and so the only place she saw fit to spend money was on herself. Remaining secluded in her fortress was her downfall. It made her unaware and oblivious to the suffering of others, which in turn made her seem selfish, cruel, and insensitive. Had Marie left the comforts of her luxurious home every once in a while, and got in the trenches with her people, perhaps there would never have been a French Revolution. And last we have number 5. She should have taken acting classes. If there's one thing the French monarchy totally got wrong, it was that they were too proud of their royal heritage, and just did not know when to quit. Okay, so we're not going to blame this one entirely on Marie Antoinette. But nevertheless, she belonged to a monarchy whose time was up, but they just couldn't read the writing on the wall. At a time when France was bankrupt, the more extravagant her spending, the more they blamed her for the nation's debt. People were hungry, angry, and in need of a scapegoat. Due to Marie's Austrian descent, her expensive tastes, and false rumors of orgies and sexual escapades, she was the perfect target. The start of the French Revolution was her wake-up call to grow up quickly and step into her role as a mature and conscientious queen. But by then the damage was already done, and there was little that she or the monarchy could do to regain trust and power. We think the entire royal family should have called it quits at the start, and taken on new identities as commoners in another country. Had they done so, they certainly would never have lost their lives or subject their children to the torture and trauma they experienced before their deaths. However, the family was deeply entrenched in the aristocracy, and they preferred to stay and fight for their God-ordained rights to rule over the people, not once realizing that they actually suck at their jobs. The flight to Varennes in 1791 is what truly did them in. Much to the king's reluctance, the royal family finally made an attempt to secretly escape from Paris, while posing as peasants. However, due to their lack of judgment on the journey, poor acting, too fancy of a carriage, and the disastrous need to be recognized as royals, they were caught only 32 miles from their final destination in a town called Varennes, and brought back to Paris to eventually meet a horrible ending for everyone involved. Obviously, they had put on a poor performance acting as peasants. Was it necessary that Marie and the king reveal to the townspeople who they were? Of course not. They really should have just laid low during their escape. But because of their strong addiction to royal etiquette, and their desperate need to be treated as important wherever they went, they ruined it for everyone. And that's it for the 5 things Marie Antoinette should have done. So what's your opinion of Marie Antoinette? Would you say she was just a scapegoat for the people, or did the punishment fit the crime? Anyway, if there's anything else you would like to mention about this topic, feel free to share it with us in the comments below. Furthermore, if you got any value out of this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon so you never miss out on another video. With that said, we'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see each other next time.